I am an actuary.
I am an actuary.
I am an actuary.
Welcome to the We Are Actuaries podcast, where you'll meet leaders who use their actuarial powers to solve a range of problems and make a real difference. I am your host, Julia Lessing, and I'm a qualified actuary based in Australia. I help actuaries develop communication and leadership skills to build great actuarial careers. So settle in, learn from the best, and be inspired. Have you ever found yourself at a point in your career where it feels like you're missing some skills? Maybe you've taken on a new management or leadership role, or you've received a promotion. And while your technical skills are probably fine, you might feel like your non-technical or business skills are somewhat lacking. But how do you know what skills you need and how to build them? Joining me to unpack this common challenge is Martin Mulcare, an experienced actuary and advisor with decades of actuarial and business experience. Martin is also my co-facilitator for the Guardian Actuarial Senior Leadership Program, and you may recognise him as our guest host for We Are Actuaries. Hi, Martin. Welcome back.
Hi, Julia. Great to be here.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you, Martin. I know we talk about these kinds of things all the time, and we teach some of these topics as well. There's such critical skills for actuaries to be successful in their careers. So, no doubt over your long career in actuarial and business, you found yourself in this kind of situation where you're looking like you feel like you need some new skills. Can you tell us a bit about your experience?
Okay, well, I think of four key management transitions over the last 40 years. The first, my second year as a full-time employee, taking over as supervisor of a small group of four actuary analysts. Secondly, leading a larger department of actuaries and accountants.
Mhm.
The third transition, taking over as general manager of a life insurance business unit with about 150 people. And the fourth, an interesting one, taking over as chair of a board, where there's some different types of management and leadership skills required there. So there are the four. But for today, I'm going to focus on the third because that's where I found there were lots of things I didn't know.
Uh-huh. So some really interesting challenges, and I'm sure our listeners can relate to at least one of those transitions that you have lived through, Martin. So, and I'm sure that your skills that you're going to share with us today will be relevant to many of those different transitions as well. But I'm glad you picked that one. So, wow, 150 people, general manager. That is a big transition for any actuary to make. What did you need to learn as you moved into that role? What didn't you know?
Well, I'm sure there were lots of things that I didn't know, and plenty of people willing to point them out to me. But the three that really stood out, the first, it was important that I really got a better handle on strategic thinking. And as an actuary, I was pretty good, I thought, at doing business plans, at setting out projects, setting out, in fact, putting business cases together. But there's a big difference, I think, between business planning and strategic thinking. So that was the first skill that was pretty evident that I needed to work on. The second, I thought I was okay looking after people, certainly okay looking after actuaries and other professionals, but a lot different when they're not reporting directly to you, and a lot different when they're not professionals. When for them, they've got to be home when the street lights come on. For them, it's not a career. This is work. They get paid, do a good job, sure, but most important is stuff outside work. So that was the second, just the idea of leading a far more diverse group. And the third, like a lot of actuaries, we can be confident, we can be proud of our achievements, our results speak for themselves. But there's a point in our career where it's more than results. We need to start influencing people. We need to be able to manage stakeholders. We need to be able to manage upwards. And that was something I was not good at all.
Gosh, Martin, as I'm listening to you share those three areas, so strategic thinking and managing diverse teams, and then the influencing piece, there's such common pain points that come up in my coaching conversations. They're things that nobody teaches us how to do. So I'm sure I'm really looking forward to hearing your stories and how you learnt how to build those skills and how you could measure progress around each of those. So let's start with strategic thinking. This one comes up a lot. So talk to us about strategic thinking in that kind of role.
Okay, so for this one, I think I got a couple of clues from the managing director who appointed me in this role that this was
Mm.
something I needed to work on. But it was also something that I knew from my consulting, from a reading, just reading business press and hearing about a change in CEO to execute a change of strategy. Thinking, I wonder why they're playing the game that way. And so it was pretty clear that I didn't have much in the way of frameworks to answer those sort of questions. So for that one, I say to people, I cheated. I took up someone else's suggestion and went on a 5 day residential program run by the Macquarie Uni Graduate School of Management. And it was a 5 day residential course on strategic thinking with a diverse mix of people from different industries, lots of case studies, a kind of classic strategy course. Led by a person who was very provocative. But that I found a really good way of learning where I could, using that term, immerse myself for a week and think about some of the frameworks, some of the theories, some of the philosophies around strategic thinking.
So you recognize that this was a big gap
Yeah.
and that the best way to learn that was just to immerse yourself in a course, to find a reputable course and to immerse yourself in that. And I imagine you would have gotten a bit of networking and other things out of that kind of experience too, not just the theory around strategy.
Yeah, and I'm conscious, as you are, Julia, different people learn different ways.
Yeah.
Uh, So the idea of a course doesn't necessarily appeal to me, but a course where it's a good mix of theory and practice,
Mm.
networking with people, discussing case studies, thinking about the application, that style did appeal to me and I think worked. Although, ask anybody, I'm not claiming expertise in strategic thinking.
But I guess we're not looking for expertise in these skills, are we, Martin? We're just looking for being able to have enough of these skills to be effective in the roles that we're at, whether it is a new team leader role or whether it's as in this situation for you, you're a general manager. A different level of strategic thinking was
Mhm.
required at that point, and so it sounds like that, yeah, that course was a good way for you to address those gaps.
Mhm. Yeah, indeed.
How did you know that you were kind of progressing in those skills how did you know you were building the skills? How do you know the course worked?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And we often encourage people to do some reflection on progress on their learning. For me, it took two forms, a kind of an external one and an internal one. For the external, I mentioned earlier, reading the business press,
Hmm.
listening to what's happening in other industries, not just for me, the life insurance industry,
Hmm.
and thinking, oh, now I get that terminology at a minimum level, or thinking, oh, now I understand why that business is running the problems, and now I understand why they think this might be a new path. So the external, just testing my thinking, testing my recognition, of some of the theory, some of the terminology was helpful. The second way of testing was internal, kind of benchmarking against the other business unit leaders. So listening to the annual strategy planning time, listening to the other business unit leaders present what they were going to do for the next 3 years or the next year. Partly, does that make sense? Partly, I'm interested in how they communicate it. And then also then benchmarking when it's my turn to speak to the exec team or speak to the board or both, kind of benchmarking the sort of responses, the sort of questions that I got back. I found that one way of testing how much progress I was making with my application of strategic theory.
Mm. Very good. Very good. So strategic thinking, I mean, I think I can see that that's an applicable skill for lots of different roles. And as you said, it's not just about business planning. it's a lot more to it than that, and will take different forms depending on the kind of role you're in as well. So yeah, great example, Martin, of how you found that skill and what you did to build that skill through a course, and then those sort of external and internal benchmarks to work out were you building that skill in the way you needed to.
Yeah.
So you're a new general manager, you've got 150 people. What else did you need?
All right, and so it wasn't just 150 people, it was 150 people coming together for the first time in a new business unit structure. I won't go into detail of the strategic theory behind that. But I had a wise, experienced HR leader who reported to me. This was a structure where HR was diversified, so each business unit leader had an HR head reporting to and what we set up was just fortnightly catch-ups where we would talk about what I could do, change, improve when it comes to engaging with, appealing to, broadly, leading all 150 people, not just the 7 direct reports that I had. So this was one where I'm learning from someone who has some expertise, but because she's in the business, she's able to kind of give feedback all the way along. And the other person who was really supportive in this was, do people still have EAs? I had an executive assistant, and she was also really helpful. So just to give you an example. So one of the things was, again, people have seen this classic tactic. If you're visiting somebody in an office on another floor, walk the long way around and make sure you do some eye contact, say hello to people within the policy admin people. If you don't know them, introduce yourself. So walk the long way around, say hello to people on the way to the meeting, whether it be in a meeting room or someone else's office. So I got this from my HR manager, but absolutely supported by the aide, because she would say, that meeting's 9:30 a.m. You better leave now so you've got time to chat along the way. Right? So it was really just helpful rather than running, 9:29, I better run. No. Go now to make sure you've got the opportunity to have those little catch-ups, hello, eye contact, good mornings. So that was, just an example of little things that got implemented but got supported by a couple of different people.
Yeah. So you had a regular catch up with the HR leader, and it sounds like she provided a little bit of almost mentoring, coaching for you, and then your EA was able to help implement some of those new things you were wanting to try as well, so that you could actually make that happen. And because that's sometimes the challenge with these skills, isn't it, Martin? That bridge between theory and practice. We can talk about them, we can read books, but until we can find a way to put them into practice in a way that works for us, it's all a bit moot, really. If it's just staying in the book or it's staying in that conversation with your mentor, but until you can actually apply it, that's when it's real. Great. Okay, so managing diverse people. So, and a different way of building skills there. So it was through coaching and through some implementation. How did you know that you were building skills in that management of diverse people?
Okay. So some of that was just informal. We used to joke about how many names I could put faces to, or faces I could put names to, out of 150 people.
Good with names, Martin.
Well, it was an interesting way of just testing my familiarity with the team and showing that I cared, that I knew who they were, knew their role. So that was one informal way. And the other was, again, I'm not sure what this happens in organisations. Presumably, they still do employee engagement surveys. So looking objectively and with the team at our employee engagement surveys, and to just think about the questions that are relevant to my role as general manager, as opposed to the role of their direct managers from everybody in the business unit. So that was a way, especially over 3 years, just to look at the trends, to see what's improving, to see what still needs work.
Mm-hmm. And that's useful feedback. I think it's easy for us to just go and learn something or feel like we're building a skill, but unless we can close the loop and check that we're actually doing that well, and you've given us a couple of examples about how you've done that, that's very powerful. It's good feedback for us to know that we're growing. Okay, so we've talked about strategic thinking. It's more than just business planning, and how you went and took a course to build some skills there. We talked about how to lead diverse people, and you got some mentoring from your HR leader, and also some support from your EA to implement that, but also some ways that you put in place to check that you were learning what you wanted to there. What else? What other skills did you need at that level?
Okay, so the third I mentioned was this idea of influencing, managing stakeholders, that as skilled actuaries, we can impress people with, gee, what a nice model, what a great report, what fantastic results, what great advice.
Mm.
But results don't speak for themselves once you get to a certain level, in my experience. So being able to influence others beyond pointing to results, being able to manage stakeholders, being able to manage upwards for our boss, the CEO, or even managing the board's perception of me as a business unit leader beyond just what the P&L might say, which they would usually dismiss anyway because it's just a claim stuff. So, uh, so that was a challenge. Now, my first GM role, that was not such a challenge because I already worked there for about 5 years. I knew most of the exec team. I knew the board because I presented as an AA before I moved to general management life. So I kind of knew people already had a bit of a handle on them. This became a real challenge for me when I moved to a new, larger empire where I had people I wasn't familiar with. They came from a different business culture, and that was a real challenge for me, the influencing of my colleagues on the exec team, influencing of my CEO boss, influencing of the board. That was a challenge. And for that one, the recommendation from the CEO after they had done some executive assessment was for me to get some formal executive coaching. And that was really helpful. And uh, it's one of those things, Julie, that I think back on now, oh, gee, how bad was I then? And even if I'm not an expert now, uh, the real revelation from the executive coach and from results was I need to work on my empathy. I had this view that we don't care about what other people think. We don't care about what other people say. And that might be helpful in a schoolyard, but in an executive team, it really is important. You know motivations, you know what people are feeling, you know what people are thinking, so that you can respond appropriately to them. So that was the main thing that my executive coach and I were working on, and just that different ways of A, understanding, but B, then leveraging. And how do you then use that to influence, to negotiate, to get some support for something that we might need from another department.
So working with your executive coach helped you to identify this challenge and actually practically work on some strategies around that, and how that was useful, and to actually implement that.
Yeah, indeed. So I'm going to give you an example because we like practical application. So this again, this may seem quite mundane, but again, for people who might know me, I'm a believer in balance. So for me, once I walked out the door in those days, all right, this is a while ago, didn't have to worry about emails at home, didn't have to worry about mobile phones at home. Once I knocked off, I knocked off. My executive coach was concerned that the CEO, who respected my sense of balance, didn't think I was taking my job seriously enough. And he said, the coach said, you've got to find ways of letting the CEO know that you do care about it. In fact, you do think about it even when you're not in these four walls. And he said, so I don't want you making up anything. I want you to be, when would be a time that you think about work that you're not in your. I said, oh no, every morning, get out of bed. I'm in the shower. I'm thinking about what's going ahead, what are my key things to achieve today, what are my big meetings,
Yep.
what are the major projects that I need to advance today. She said, great, perfect. In your fortnightly catch-ups with the CEO, just subtly, just let him know, oh, this morning I was in the shower, I was thinking about dot, dot, dot. So it's as simple as that was his advice, but it's not something I would have thought about. Right? But just another subtle way of reminding. I'm not going to go in there and say, oh, I think about work outside the office. No, but just subtly being able to say, oh, I was in the shower, I was thinking about this project, and
Yep.
this is what I'm now thinking.
Yep.
So it was just good, practical, implementable guidance, just
Yep.
as one example.
That's a great example, Martin. And I think even though we do have email and other things outside of the four walls of our offices these days, I still think that strategy is a great one, not just sending your boss an email at 6 a.m. saying, hey, I was just thinking about this to prove that you were thinking about it early. But, that's a really great example that I think still applies in today's workforce too, because we shouldn't be sending emails at 6 a.m. just for that purpose.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, so a different one here. This influencing piece, and people come to me for executive coaching on this all the time because it is a really nuanced
Yeah.
skill, I think.
Yeah.
And I liked your point that, sometimes we might think that we've got these skills down pat, but actually we find ourselves in a new role and we need to elevate that skill to a new level, or we might need some extra tools to be able to implement that skill successfully. So this part around managing up, around influencing,
Yeah.
I think it's a really key skill for a lot of people, no matter where they're at in the career continuum.
Sure.
And you used executive coaching quite successfully to be able to help you build that skill around empathy. So how did you know that that was working? How did you know that your skills were progressing?
Okay. So this is a lot harder to actually measure than the other two skills.
Mm.
And so I'm still not sure that in that environment that was that effective. But I think the tone, questions, conversations in the exec team, I think
Hmm.
was a good indicator of when I was kind of tapping into what people were interested in.
Yep.
If we're giving an update in the executive team, previously it was like, hey, well, what's life insurance? Who cares about that anyway? So being able to do a bit of what's in it for them and just
Mhm.
test that I actually got a question or a comment or, oh, I see, I didn't understand that before. Those, just that little element, those feedback comments I found
Mm.
useful to validate that I was making good
Mm.
progress. But the main one was the interaction with the CEO and being able to test with him, how much we were learning about each other. I was willing to both share and play back.
Okay. So going back to where the challenge came up in the first point, it sounds like it was the CEO who had suggested the exec coaching for you, and so then closing that loop as well and getting some feedback there, not just from your own perspective, thinking how's this going, but also seeking the feedback from others to be able
Yeah.
to validate that progress. Okay. All right. So you've shared some really valuable skills that actuaries need at different points in their career: strategic thinking, being able to lead diverse people, not just actuaries, not even just professionals sometimes, and influencing others, that managing up piece, which is so critical for many of us at different points. And you've talked about different ways that you built those skills. In the first instance, with the strategic thinking, you took yourself on a 5-day course,
Yep.
and then with the managing diverse people, you sought out a mentor within the business who could kind of walk alongside you and give you some practical tips for that specific situation. And then for influencing others, you've sought the help of an external executive coach. So, of those different learning experiences, and I'm sure you've got other learning experiences to draw on, Martin. I mean, what were some of the pros and cons of those different approaches? What are your reflections about that?
Well, I think my general comment would be the point I made earlier that some self-awareness about how we learn, how we like to learn, is really important. So all three of them work because of the interaction element. I'm bouncing ideas past another experienced human being, and then being able to have it implementable, I think, was also a key element for all three.
Mm.
I think the aspect that was different was the reliance on theory. So theory was big for not so much read a book or read this paper for leading people. There was a little bit of reading that my exec coach gave me, but I'm not a big reader. So Diagrams I love, and he gave me a few. So I think the reflection is very different if you describe them like you did, Julia, but some key themes around implementable interaction and being able to just get enough theory to support the practice.
You're listening to the We Are Actuaries podcast, brought to you by the Guardian Actuarial Leadership Program. If you're looking for a tailored training program to help you build your communication and leadership skills, registrations are now open. Head over to guardianactuarial.com.au for more information.
Yeah, absolutely. So enough theory, but not just reading a book, actually being able to bring it to life and implement those skills and get some practice. And then the measurable piece as well. It sounds like you had some quite different ways for each of those skills to measure your progress. I guess just one question around that, Martin. Did you, when you were thinking, okay, how will I measure progress?
Yeah.
As actuaries, this is the kind of thing we like to do. We like our data. We like to measure things. Did you sort of set those metrics for yourself when you realized that you needed to learn these skills, or did it kind of come later, or did it sort of evolve? What can you tell me about that?
Well, I'd love to say that I had set up some metrics and some frameworks for measuring progress, but no, I didn't. At risk of being kind of thrown out for my lack of rigor. No, I didn't. But for me, the conversations with my superior officer were really important in those. So being able to compare notes, either the fortnightly catch-ups or especially a 6 monthly performance review, to think about, well, in the first example, well, you went on the course, how's it coming along? And say, well, this is how I think I'm making progress, but you're the best person to tell me. So I found that it was driven, I suppose, more by the regular review meetings with my boss to test progress rather than my own metrics or my own frameworks.
Yeah. So powerful to get that feedback from others and also encouraging too. Sometimes, especially when we're building a new skill, we might feel out of our comfort zone. We might not know if it's actually working or we're doing it. So to get that sort of feedback from those around us can be very powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, so you shared 3 skills from your experience stepping into that GM role, Martin. What else do actuaries find challenging when they're making these sort of management and leadership transitions?
I think for me, the one additional skill is that of empowerment or enablement.
Mm-hmm.
Actuaries are capable people, and especially in our early days in the workplace, we get stuff done, and we get stuff done well. So when we move to a position of supervision, managing, leading, we should be relying on other people to get stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, for many actuaries, that's difficult because we think we can do it better and we might be able to. But just this whole sense of letting go, that's that person's responsibility, is, I think, a difficult one, whether it be skills around delegation or just trust or this whole general word empowerment, I think is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for me, I was fortunate. I learned a few of those skills outside the workforce.
Ah.
So when I was first supervising, this was not such a challenge for me. Again, you might find some witnesses to disagree, but say I'm playing in a cricket team. I'm in fact captain of a cricket team. I'm not a wicketkeeper. I don't know. I'm not going to tell the wicketkeeper how to do things. I've got to trust that he gets the job done well. And even if I'm a bowler with someone else bowling, I'm not going to tell them how to do something. I trust that they know what they're doing from their own skills and experience. If they come and ask me, sure, I'm happy to give guidance and wisdom. But this idea in a team environment, a team sporting environment, to trust other people to do their jobs, that enabled me to trust other people when I was in roles which I couldn't possibly know everything. So what would be an example? I played CFO for a little while. I don't know anything about tax, well, no, how to spell it. So I've got a person reporting me who is the manager of the tax function. So I'm going to trust that she is doing the right thing. She knows what she's doing. She sends a report through me as CFO, goes to the board. I'm going to back her, right? And so this is difficult for some people, I acknowledge, but we can get some of that skill from outside the workplace sometimes.
So you had already built that skill in a non-business setting, and then been able to kind of transfer that into the business world. So for you, it wasn't something you needed to you realized you needed to build at work. You kind of already had the foundations of that to be able to apply.
I think so. I've still got to be conscious of it. And I think this, again, if I'm managing somebody and I'm relying on them, then our one-on-ones, I'm trying to underline that I am trusting them. I am going to support them, and therefore avoid some of those detailed questions, that micromanagement, that second guessing. So that still requires a bit of discipline.
And I think that awareness that you've mentioned as well, Martin, I think that goes a long way for a lot of these skills, because if we have that self-awareness and we can sort of reflect on how things are going, they can give us clues to where are the gaps in our skills and what might we need to be building so that we can continue to be successful in those roles. Okay, so some really helpful examples and tips and advice today. Thank you, Martin. So 4 different areas that actuaries, may need to build skills around strategic thinking, around leading different and diverse groups of people, around influencing others and managing up, and also the one about empowerment, which is a common one right across even that first scenario that you were talking about, that first management role. And we talk about that a lot in both our leadership program for new managers and the senior leadership program that we run as well. So I guess to wrap up, I'd just love to hear, what are your reflections, having thought through all of those topics, Martin? What are your reflections for skill building for actuaries as we progress through our careers?
So I think the first is a general reflection on these skills that we're not familiar with, and do we kind of aspire to be experts and super? And so the 4 I mentioned, I wouldn't be claiming expertise in any, certainly not the first 3. But I think being able to get them to a level, a threshold, I think your term, Julia, was that we are effective in our role. So that's a judgment thing about which of the skills we don't have do we need to get to a threshold, which can we just do without. But if we think, no, we do need to get them to a certain threshold, then being willing and able to work on them, but perhaps not aspire too high if we really have the capability of becoming a strategic expert.
I think it's good to have that awareness of strengths, and really we go a long way if we can capitalize on our strengths. And as you said, make sure we reach a certain threshold so that our weaknesses or our areas that maybe don't come naturally to us, at least are not a liability for us in our careers. So to wrap up, Martin, I'd love to ask you one final question, and it's this. What's your top tip for actuaries wanting to prepare for leadership roles?
My top tip, and I've probably alluded to this a couple of times, I'd suggest that you use your annual or 6-monthly performance review, your learning and development conversations with your manager to think about and to get some guidance on what might be suitable skills for you to work on, and most importantly, how to do that. I think the trick would be not thinking about it in your current role. I'm sure your manager will have several suggestions about things to work on in your current role, but just to think one step ahead or maybe 2 steps ahead, opening the conversation with your manager. If I was aspiring to this role, what would be a skill you think I should work on, and what might be a good way for me to develop it? That sort of question, start introducing it in your learning and development conversations.
So get some advice from your manager, and don't just think about now, but think about what's next. Some great tips, Martin. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your stories and advice and wisdom today. I'm sure they will all be very helpful and resonate with our listeners around the world. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.
So there you have it, real life stories and practical tips from a leader using their actuarial superpowers to make a difference in the world. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to get in touch, subscribe, leave us a review and share it with your network. You'll find details from today's interview in the show notes below and on our website www.guardianactuarial.com.au. Until next time.